One of the results of the 2022 election is that the DFL now holds the majority in the Senate. The DFL caucus voted in November to select some key leaders and chose Senator Bobby Joe Champion to become the president of the Senate. He joins me now to talk about his new role. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Shannon. I always like being here with you.
What interested you about the role of Senate president, and what was your pitch to the caucus?
Well, you know, what really interests me about being Senate president is because I recognize the importance of being a conduit by which to make sure robust and appropriate discussions can happen on the floor around important public policy. And my hope is to always create an environment for that discussion to happen and for people to feel like that they are heard. And why is it important for the members to be heard? Because they represent Minnesotans. And when Minnesotans' voices are being heard, and we can consider that as a part of our argument, for lack of a better word, I think it works out. And so the pitch that I put forward to my caucus was, one, I have the skills and qualifications by which to do it. And not only that, by electing me, they are also not only electing someone with the skills and qualifications and who understands the importance of this role, but I will be the first African American or person of color to preside over a legislative body. And if we want folks to, to continue to see the important work of Minnesotans and how we lead on these important issues, then why not here? And why not now? Not just for the communities I represent, but for the majority community as well. When we think in terms of, kids from the majority culture, seeing a person of color presiding over a legislative body, and they ask a question, or they can see someone like me in that place of space, I think it only adds to them recognizing that we too can lead, and we too should be respected for our intellectual capacity as well.
And you're previewing my next question just a little bit, because as you say, your elevation to this role is historic. You were the first person of color to become Senate president in the state of Minnesota. I noted yesterday at Governor Walz's swearing-in ceremony that he spoke about how this legislature is more like the people of Minnesota than any legislature in the history of the state. And it's not just simply representation, it's also in leadership, because you are now a leader. What will be this impact on the state of Minnesota?
I think when you have the opportunity for a cross-section of people to come together and sit around the table and think about issues, you get a cross-section of views and experiences. And that only improves whatever you are attempting to do. Right? And I think it's important to have not just someone from greater Minnesota or suburbia, but also from the metropolitan area. Women, veterans, lawyers, doctors, you name it, teachers. I just think it's important to have those voices at the table. And I do think it improves things, right? It's because if I look at something, there's a well-known movie that I like is called Vantage Point. And so it really encapsulates what I think. So if one is looking at an issue, based on where you're standing and your vantage point, you have a different perspective and you can give another perspective. And I think that's what we should always do when it comes to public policy. So I think having a cross-section of folks and a very diverse legislative body only improves the lives of Minnesotans.
The president of the Senate is the parliamentarian of the body, overseeing the business of lawmaking and ensuring that the rules and procedures are followed. Have you been immersed in parliamentary procedure these last couple months?
I would say yes, right? And understanding that I don't know everything, right? Some things you only realize how these rules apply and how you can best implement them based on real-time experiences, right? But I also understand why we do it. So it's just like someone who is riding in the car, and the whole reason why you shouldn't go over the speed limit is because people think about safety and how you have the ability to react if you see things, right? And so when you think in terms of being on the legislative floor, there's a reason why you speak to the president as opposed to speaking directly to a member in order to cut down on personalities or tension between individuals. And also, it's that strange thing that we have to do in the Senate where you can't turn around and talk to someone else. You have to talk to me. But I understand how we want to make sure that folks are heard, their arguments are considered, but not based on personality, and we don't want to do anything that would challenge or look down on someone's humanity, because we all have a voice and we all should be able to speak.
So everyone will go through you. In the press conference following your election as president, you spoke of balancing the rules and traditions of the Senate, which are very important to the Senate, but also the importance of having robust discussion on the Senate floor. Because you've been in the minority for much of your time in the Senate, does this hold a special place for you, this idea that the minority's voice should still be heard, that there should be dissent voiced on the floor?
Absolutely. You know, I think because I served in the minority and I know what it feels like to also be a minority, so, and sometimes not feel like people listen to me or hear me or don't create space for me to talk about what I think. To me, that is something that is near and dear to my heart. How do we make sure that all voices are heard? Because at the end of the day, I don't just want one side being able to say what they think. I want the other side to be able to say what they think as well. And if we really have an open mind, and if we really are people-centered, then we'll listen to how that policy or position that someone is taking, how that benefits Minnesotans. And I keep lifting up the word Minnesotans. That's for real to me, right? It's because I know that we are 67 senators coming from all over the state. We all have different viewpoints sometimes. But I also look at disagreements as opportunities to agree, right? So I think we can find opportunities to agree if we're willing to engage each other, and we can learn something. I come from a Southern family, but I'm not necessarily an agricultural guy, right? So I think it would be great to understand, you know, what farmers are going through, and some small farms, and how corporate farming challenges them, and how can we make sure that we understand how food, you know, gets from the field onto the table. So I just think opportunities by which to create that space, and being in the minority should not mean your voice is less. It means that your voice is just as important as those who are in the majority.
Not only will you preside over the Senate, you will also chair the Senate Jobs and Economic Development Committee, a committee on which you've been the ranking member for many years. Why was it important to you to lead a committee and be the Senate president? Well,
leading a committee, it gives you an opportunity to make sure you can spend some money and make investments into various communities. And when you think in terms of jobs and economic development, the backbone to our society is small businesses. How do we make sure that we give them the capital that they need, but how do we make sure workers have the training and capacity that they need to be good, right? And there's a well-known phrase that says, the best social program is a job. And I think that we have to be very creative about how do we make sure people are able to make a livable wage, not just a minimum wage, but a livable wage. So to be able to do both gives me that honor, and I do consider it honor to lead and be a chair and be the chair of jobs and economic growth, because I do believe that jobs and economic growth is important for us as individuals and families and communities and neighbors, but as a state as well. I want us to continue to be competitive. I want us to not only compete with Iowa, but I want us to compete globally. How do we do that in real time, and how do we do it in a real way, while also creating an opportunity for a young person to think and to dream?
Senate President Champion, I want to thank you so much for your time and congratulate you on your new role.
Thank you so much, and it's always so good to see you.